Somebody call animal control. We got a lost one out here.
Two cops, one woman.
Who's
A quiet street where every porch light was on.
I'm a citizen driving home, officer, that's all.
The bigger cop grabbed her collar and dragged her out like a dog from a kennel.
Like a
Her
dog from a
knees
kennel.
slammed against the asphalt. Her palms scraped the ground before she could even breathe.
On your knees, now!
Then he slapped her.
Sit like a good little mutt!
Full force. The sound bounced off every silent house on the block. No warrant, no reason. Just her skin and his badge. But those two cops had no idea. The woman on that pavement was about to bury them both. 6 hours before that slap, Faith Robinson's biggest problem was picking a cake flavor. It was a warm Tuesday evening in late September. The sun hung low over Ashford, Virginia, a mid-sized city of about 120,000 people, where the welcome signs said "Unity in Diversity," and the complaint files told a different story. Faith had just finished her weekly yoga class at a small studio on 5th Street. Her muscles were loose. Her mind was quiet. She wore black leggings, a faded Howard University hoodie, and running shoes that had seen better days. No makeup. Hair pulled into a loose twist. She looked like any woman heading home after a long day. And that was exactly how she liked it. Because Faith Robinson was not any woman. Monday through Friday, she wore a pressed uniform with stars on the collar. She carried a service weapon. She sat in meetings with city attorneys and federal investigators. She was deputy chief of the Ashford Police Department, the highest-ranking black woman in the department's history. And in 2 months, when Chief Gerald Tate retired, she was expected to take his chair. But on Tuesday evenings, she was just Faith. Yoga pants, Honda Accord, grocery list on her phone. She tossed her gym bag onto the back seat and pulled out of the parking lot. The air smelled like warm pavement and someone's backyard grill. She rolled the windows down and let the breeze in. Her phone buzzed on the dashboard mount. A FaceTime call from her brother, Terrence. She tapped the hands-free button. "Tell me you've decided on the cake," Terrence said. His voice filled the car, deep, warm, always half-laughing. "Mama wants lemon. I want chocolate. You're the tiebreaker." Chocolate, obviously. Lemon cake at a 75th birthday party is a crime against joy. Faith laughed. "I'll tell her you said that." "Don't you dare." They went back and forth for a few minutes. The cake, the guest list, whether Uncle Curtis should be allowed near the karaoke machine again. It was the kind of conversation that made the world feel small and safe. Just a sister and a brother planning their mother's birthday. Faith turned onto Maple Ridge Drive. It was a quiet residential street on the east side of town. Wide lawns, trimmed hedges, porch lights glowing amber in the dusk. A nice neighborhood. A predominantly white neighborhood. "All right, T, I gotta go. I still need to grab groceries." "Love you, sis. Drive safe." "Always do." She tapped the screen to hang up. Or she thought she did. The call timer kept running, small numbers ticking away in the corner of the display. But Faith didn't notice. She was already thinking about what to cook for dinner. Now here's what you need to know about Ashford. 2 years before this night, the Department of Justice flagged the Ashford PD for a pattern of racial profiling. The report was damning. Traffic stops targeting black drivers at 3 times the rate of white drivers in the same neighborhoods. Excessive force complaints buried under paperwork. A culture of silence protected by a chain of command that didn't want to look too closely. Reforms were promised. Faith's promotion was part of that promise. But not every officer got the message. And not every officer wanted to. There was one officer in particular whose complaint file read like a novel nobody wanted to publish. 11 complaints in 9 years. 8 involved black or Latino civilians. 2 included racial slurs caught on dashcam audio, and every single complaint had been quietly resolved with a handshake and a training seminar. His name was Dale Hartwell, and tonight he was on patrol. Faith was halfway down Maple Ridge Drive when she noticed the headlights in her rearview mirror. A patrol car. No lights, no siren, just sitting behind her, matching her speed. She checked her speedometer. 28 in a 30 zone. She signaled right and turned onto a side street. The patrol car followed. She signaled left onto another block. The patrol car followed. 6 blocks now. No lights, no reason, just a shadow with a badge. Then, one short whoop of the siren. Red and blue flashed alive behind her. Faith pulled over. Put the car in park. Placed her hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. She did this not because she was afraid. She did it because she knew exactly what could happen to a black woman on a dark street if her hands weren't visible. And that knowledge, the fact that she even had to think about it, said everything. The flashlight came first. Not a polite beam angled at the window. A full blast straight into her eyes. Faith squinted but kept her hands on the wheel. The light was hot and white, the kind that turned everything behind it into a dark wall. She couldn't see the officer's face. She could only hear his boots crunching gravel as he walked toward her door. He didn't greet her, didn't introduce himself, didn't say good evening. License and registration. Keep your hands where I can see them. The voice was flat and hard. Not the voice of someone conducting a routine stop. The voice of someone who had already made up his mind. Faith kept her tone even. Good evening, officer. Can I ask why I was pulled over? Nothing. He just stood there, flashlight burning into her face. Then he said it again. Louder this time, slower, like he was talking to someone who didn't speak the language. License and registration. Are we going to have a problem here? Faith reached toward the passenger seat where her purse sat. She moved deliberately, slow hands, open fingers, every motion exaggerated. She knew the drill. Every black person in America knew the drill. Move too fast and you become a threat. Move too slow and you're being uncooperative. The margin for survival was razor thin, and it changed depending on the officer's mood. She pulled out her civilian driver's license. Not her department credentials, not her badge. She made that choice on purpose. She wanted to see how this officer treated a regular person. A regular black person. She held the license out the window. He snatched it. The flashlight swept down to the card, then back up to her face. She watched his eyes move, from the photo to her skin, to the car, to the address on the license. She could almost hear the math running in his head. Older car, modest address, black woman, yoga clothes. He had already reached his verdict. Ma'am, you were swerving back there. You been drinking tonight? Faith felt her jaw tighten. She had not been swerving. She knew she had not been swerving. She had spent 20 years in law enforcement. She could drive a straight line in her sleep. I was not swerving, officer. I haven't had anything to drink. Step out of the vehicle. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a request. It was a command, delivered with the casual authority of a man who had never been told no. Faith took one slow breath. Then she opened the door and stepped out. The evening air hit her skin. It smelled like jasmine from somebody's garden and cooling engine oil. Crickets hummed in the hedges. It would have been a peaceful night if it weren't for the red and blue lights turning the whole street into a crime scene. She saw him clearly now for the first time. Tall, broad shoulders, late 30s, blonde hair buzzed short, a jaw set like concrete. His nameplate read, Hartwell. His right hand rested on his holster, not gripping, just resting. But she knew what that gesture meant. It was a message, a reminder of who held the power. Behind him, a second officer stood near the patrol car. Younger, thinner, mid-20s. His nameplate said, Sutton. He had his arms folded and his eyes on the ground. He looked like a kid standing outside the principal's office, uncomfortable but unwilling to leave. Hartwell pointed to the back of Faith's car. Stand there, face the vehicle, hands on the trunk. Faith walked to the rear of the Honda. She placed her palms flat on the trunk. The metal was still warm from the engine. She could feel the grit of road dust under her fingertips. Hartwell followed her. He stood too close. She could feel the heat from his body, smell the stale coffee on his breath. He was inside her personal space, deliberately, aggressively. It was a dominance tactic. She had taught a seminar on exactly this technique at the police academy 3 years ago. I'm going to need you to take a field sobriety test. Faith had every legal right to refuse. She knew the statute by heart. But she also knew something else. She glanced at his chest and saw the small red light. His body cam was on. Everything was being recorded. Fine, she said. I'll take the test. Walk heel to toe. 9 steps forward. 9 steps back. Start now. Faith walked the line. Heel to toe. Perfect balance. Arms steady at her sides. The asphalt was rough and uneven, but her steps were precise. 9 forward. Turn. 9 back. Hartwell watched with his arms crossed. His jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. Touch your nose with your right index finger. Now left. Now right again. She did it without hesitation. Every movement clean. Stand on your left foot. Raise the right one 6 inches off the ground. Hold for 30 seconds. She stood like a statue. 30 seconds. Not a wobble. The breeze moved her hoodie, but her body didn't shift an inch. She passed every test perfectly. And she watched Hartwell's face change, not softer, not apologetic, harder, angrier. He had expected her to fail. He had needed her to fail. She had given him nothing, and that made him furious. A rational officer would have said, "Thank you, ma'am, you're free to go." A decent officer would have apologized for the inconvenience. Hartwell did neither. I'm going to need to search your vehicle. The words landed like a brick on glass. Faith turned to face him. For the first time, her composure had an edge to it. Officer, I do not consent to a search. You have no probable cause. The street was quiet enough to hear a sprinkler hissing 2 houses down. A car door closed somewhere in the distance. Hartwell stared at her. She stared back. You don't get to tell me what I can and can't do, he said. His voice dropped low. A whisper meant only for her. Not here. Not tonight. Faith held his gaze. I know my rights, and I know yours. You have no probable cause to search my vehicle. Something shifted in his eyes. The irritation curdled into something uglier. She had talked back. She had quoted the law. She had refused to be small, and for a man like Hartwell, that was unforgivable. A porch light flickered on across the street. A woman stepped outside, mid-30s, brown skin, wearing scrubs. She had a phone in her hand. She held it up, and the screen glowed in the dark. Denise Holloway, a nurse finishing a double shift. She had heard the siren and come out to check. Now she was recording. 2 more neighbors appeared. A white couple stood in their driveway, arms crossed, watching in silence. A young black man on the opposite corner held his phone steady at chest level. Hartwell noticed the audience. He didn't care. If anything, it fueled him. His voice got louder, his posture wider. He wasn't embarrassed. He was performing. He grabbed Faith's arm, hard, sudden, and twisted it behind her back. The motion was violent and practiced. He shoved her forward, and her chest hit the trunk of the car. The impact pushed the air from her lungs. Faith gasped, but she did not scream. She pressed her cheek against the warm metal and spoke, clearly, loudly, for every camera and every witness on that street. "You are hurting me. I have not committed a crime. This is being recorded." Hartwell leaned close to her ear. "Shut your mouth." Then he slapped her. Open palm, full force. The sound cracked through the still evening air like a gunshot. It echoed off the houses, the parked cars, the silent porches. Denise flinched on her porch. Her hand shook, but the phone didn't move. Sutton, the younger officer, took a half-step forward. His lips parted like he was about to speak. Then he stopped. He looked at Denise's phone. He looked at the ground, and he stepped back. The side of Faith's face burned. Her ear rang. She tasted something metallic in the back of her throat, but she didn't cry. She didn't beg. She stood there against the trunk of her own car, arm twisted behind her, cheek stinging, and she waited. Because Faith Robinson knew something that Dale Hartwell did not. Every second of this was being recorded. Not just by the bystanders, not just by the body cam, but by an open phone line sitting in her car, connected to the most powerful man in the city. And he had heard everything. Hartwell didn't waste a second. He nodded at Sutton. "Search the car." Sutton blinked. He looked at Faith, pinned against the trunk, one arm still twisted behind her back, then looked at Hartwell. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Dale, she said she doesn't consent." "Did I stutter?" "Search the car." Sutton swallowed hard. He walked to the Honda like a man walking toward a cliff. He opened the passenger door and leaned in. The interior of Faith's car smelled like lavender and clean fabric. A yoga mat sat in the back seat, rolled neatly beside a gym bag. A reusable water bottle in the cup holder. A paperback novel, spine cracked halfway, tucked into the door pocket. On the passenger floor, a brown paper bag of groceries, tomatoes, fresh basil, a box of pasta. Nothing illegal, nothing suspicious, nothing even remotely interesting. Sutton went through the glove compartment. Registration, insurance card, an old pair of sunglasses. He opened the center console. Gum, a phone charger, a handful of receipts, and then his hand stopped. Sitting beneath the receipts was a small laminated card, an internal parking placard with the Ashford Police Department crest printed in gold. It wasn't a badge, it wasn't an ID, but it was enough to make Sutton's fingers go cold. He stared at it for 3 seconds. Then he placed it back exactly where he found it. He closed the console. He didn't say a word to Hartwell. He walked back to the patrol car and stood there with his arms at his sides, staring at the ground like a man who had just realized the building he was standing in was on fire. Meanwhile, Hartwell had Faith in handcuffs. The metal clicked around her wrists, tight, deliberate. She felt the cold steel bite into her skin. He pulled her off the trunk and walked her to the patrol car, his grip firm on her elbow. He positioned her against the side of the cruiser, under the red and blue lights that painted her face in alternating flashes. Then he started talking. Not questioning. Talking. The way someone talks when they believe there will never be consequences. "You know, we've been getting calls about this neighborhood," he said, leaning against the hood. His tone was casual, almost friendly, like he was telling a story at a bar. "People are nervous. Strange cars driving through. You understand, right? You fit the description." Faith said nothing. She stood perfectly still. "What description?" she finally asked. Hartwell smiled. "You know, general description. Average height, dark complexion, driving slow through a residential area. People notice that kind of thing around here." The subtext was so loud it might as well have been a billboard. "You don't belong here. Your skin is the crime. Your presence is the threat." He looked at her hoodie. "Howard University. College girl, huh?" He let out a low whistle. "Lot of good that did you standing here in cuffs." Faith's jaw tightened, but she stayed quiet. She let him talk. She let the body cam eat every word. Hartwell ran her plates. He took his time, dragging the process out like a man savoring a meal. He leaned into the cruiser, punched the keyboard, waited, leaned back, checked his phone, waited some more. The minutes stretched. The crowd grew. Denise Holloway had moved off her porch now. She stood on the sidewalk, phone raised, tears running down her face, but her arm locked steady. 2 more neighbors had appeared, an older white man in a bathrobe and a teenage girl clutching her phone with both hands. The young black man across the street hadn't moved. His camera had been rolling since the beginning. Hartwell noticed them. All of them. He scanned the small crowd with a slow, deliberate look, the kind designed to make people step back. "Anyone want to join her?" he called out. "Interfere with police business and I'll arrest every one of you for obstruction. This ain't a show." Nobody answered. Nobody left either. He turned back to Faith. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was something quieter, something patient. And it bothered him. "Something funny?" he asked. "I want your name and badge number," Faith said. Her voice was clear as water. "I am filing a formal complaint." Hartwell laughed. Not a chuckle. A full, head-back, open-mouthed laugh. He turned to Sutton, who was standing 6 feet away, looking like he might be sick. "You hear that, Sutton? She's filing a complaint." He wiped his eye like she had told the funniest joke of his life. "Go ahead, sweetheart. File whatever you want. See how far that gets a woman like you." Then he shoved her. Both hands. Hard. Square in the chest. Faith stumbled backward. Her ankle caught on the curb. With her hands cuffed behind her, she couldn't catch herself. She went down, one knee hitting the pavement, then the other. Her leggings tore at the knee. The asphalt scraped her skin raw. Denise screamed from the sidewalk. "That's assault! I have this on video, that is assault!" Hartwell spun on her. 3 fast steps toward the sidewalk. He towered over Denise by a full foot. "Ma'am, step back, or you're next. I will put you in that car right beside her. You want that? You want to spend the night in a cell?" Denise stepped back. Her chin trembled, but her phone stayed up. Her hands shook, but the lens never dropped. Sutton moved. Finally. He walked over to Hartwell and spoke quietly, almost whispering. "Dale, maybe we should let her go. There's nothing in the car. The plates are clean. We got nothing." Hartwell didn't even look at him. "I'll decide when we're done." The radio crackled. Dispatch confirmed what Sutton already knew. The Honda Accord was registered to a Faith Robinson. No warrants, no flags, no record. Clean as a church window. A rational officer would have uncuffed her. A decent officer would have helped her off the ground. Hartwell grabbed her arm and yanked her to her feet. He straightened her up like he was fixing a piece of furniture. "Here's what's going to happen," he said. "I'm bringing you in. Resisting a lawful order, suspicious behavior. You can explain yourself at the station." He was making it up as he went. Manufacturing charges like a factory running overtime. Faith looked at him. Her knees stung, her cheek still burned from the slap. Her wrists ached inside the cuffs. But when she spoke, her voice was a blade wrapped in velvet. "You have made a very serious mistake tonight, officer." For one moment, just one, something flickered in Hartwell's eyes. Not guilt, not fear, just a tiny crack in the armor. A fraction of a second where some buried instinct told him that something was wrong. Then it was gone. He blinked, and the arrogance sealed back over like wet concrete. "Yeah, get in the car." He opened the back door of the cruiser and put her inside. The seat was hard plastic. It smelled like disinfectant and old sweat. The partition between the front and back seats was scratched and cloudy. Faith sat there in the flashing red and blue light, hands cuffed behind her, knees raw, face throbbing. Sutton closed the door. He wouldn't look at her through the window. Outside, the crowd had grown to a dozen people, 3 phones recording. Denise had her hand over her mouth, still filming with the other. The teenage girl was crying. The old man in the bathrobe was shaking his head, over and over, like a metronome counting down to something nobody could stop. Inside the patrol car, Faith sat perfectly still. Her breathing was slow and controlled. Her eyes were dry. She was not panicking. Because in her Honda, sitting in the cup holder, screen still glowing, her phone was still connected. The call to her brother had never ended. And Mayor Terrence Robinson had heard every single word, every insult, every shove, every slap, every fabricated charge. And right now, he was already on his 3rd phone call. 12 minutes. That's all it took. 12 minutes from the moment Terrence Robinson hung up his 3rd call to the moment a black, unmarked SUV turned onto Maple Ridge Drive with its lights flashing. Terrence had moved fast. First call, Captain Neil Dawson, Faith's direct supervisor and a 30-year veteran who didn't tolerate nonsense on his best day. Second call, the city attorney's emergency line. Third call, the Internal Affairs Division, where a duty officer picked up on the first ring and immediately wished he hadn't. Dawson was already in his car when Terrence called. He lived 11 minutes from Maple Ridge Drive. He made it in 9. The SUV pulled up behind Hartwell's cruiser. The headlights were blinding. A second vehicle, a white sedan with an IA placard on the dash, rolled in 30 seconds later and parked across the street. Hartwell was leaning against his patrol car, arms crossed, looking at his phone. Sutton stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, staring at the pavement like it held the answers to every bad decision he had ever made. The SUV door opened. Dawson stepped out. He wasn't in uniform. Gray slacks, a navy polo, reading glasses still perched on his head from whatever he had been doing at home. He didn't look like a captain. He looked like somebody's dad who had been interrupted during the evening news. But the way he walked, straight-backed, jaw set, eyes locked on Hartwell like a missile finding its target. There was no mistaking the authority. Hartwell straightened up. He pocketed his phone. He didn't recognize Dawson out of uniform, but he recognized the energy. Something was wrong. Dawson stopped 3 feet in front of him. He didn't extend a hand. He didn't say good evening. "Officer Hartwell." It wasn't a greeting. It was a pin being pulled from a grenade. "Yes, sir." "Do you know who you just put in the back of your car?" Hartwell's chin lifted. The defiance was still there, bruised but clinging. Some woman who was resisting a lawful stop. "I have it all documented, sir." She was... "That woman," Dawson said, cutting through Hartwell's voice like a blade through paper, "is Deputy Chief Faith Robinson. She is your commanding officer. She outranks every person on this street, including me." The color drained from Hartwell's face. It didn't fade. It vanished, like someone had pulled a plug and let it all run out. Dawson wasn't finished. "She is also the sister of Mayor Terrence Robinson, who has been listening to this entire stop on an open phone line. Every word, Officer Hartwell, every single word." The street went silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that has weight. The kind that presses against your chest and makes it hard to breathe. Even the crickets stopped. Hartwell's mouth opened. Nothing came out. His eyes darted to Sutton, to the crowd, to the IA sedan across the street, back to Dawson. He looked like a man standing in the middle of a highway watching headlights come toward him. Sutton leaned against the patrol car. His legs had gone soft. His face was the color of old paper. Dawson walked past Hartwell without another word. He opened the back door of the cruiser. Faith sat inside, wrists still cuffed, knees scraped, the red mark on her cheek now darkening toward purple. Dawson reached in and removed the handcuffs himself. Gently. Carefully. Like he was handling something that should never have been touched. "Deputy Chief, are you all right?" Faith stepped out of the car. She stood up straight. She rolled her shoulders. She brushed the grit off her leggings with slow, deliberate hands. When she looked up, her eyes were dry and her voice was steady. "I will be, Captain. Please secure Officer Hartwell's weapon and body cam immediately. Both will be needed as evidence." There it was. Not a request. An order. Delivered with the quiet authority of someone who had spent 20 years earning the right to give it. Dawson turned to Hartwell. "Your badge, your weapon, your body cam. Now." Hartwell's hands were shaking. He fumbled with his holster. The gun nearly slipped from his fingers. He unclipped his badge and held it out like it burned his skin. He tried one more time, one last gasp. "Captain, she didn't identify herself. I had no way of knowing." Faith turned to face him. It was the first time she had looked directly at him since the cuffs came off. Her voice was not loud. It was not angry. It was something far worse than either. "I shouldn't have to. That's the entire point." The words hit the street like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples everywhere. Every witness felt it. Every phone captured it. Denise Holloway let out a sob from the sidewalk. Somewhere behind her, someone started clapping. Then another person. Then 3 more. The sound grew, not thunderous, not a standing ovation. Just a slow, steady rhythm of palms meeting palms in the dark. A dozen strangers applauding a woman who had just taken the worst a badge could give and was still standing. Hartwell stared at the ground. His hands hung empty at his sides. No gun, no badge, no power. He was nobody now, and everybody on that street knew it. It happened fast after that. Dawson radioed dispatch and requested 2 additional units. Within minutes, a second patrol car arrived, then a third. Maple Ridge Drive, which had been a quiet, suburban street an hour ago, now looked like the scene of a major incident. Because it was. Hartwell and Sutton were placed on immediate suspension. Right there, on the sidewalk, in front of every neighbor, every phone, every witness who had watched the whole thing unfold. Dawson collected Sutton's badge and weapon next. Sutton handed them over without a word. His eyes were red. His hands were steady, but the rest of him looked like it had been hollowed out from the inside. An IA officer, a woman in a dark blazer with a recorder clipped to her belt, began taking preliminary statements. She spoke to Denise first. Then the white couple in their driveway. Then the teenage girl, who could barely get through 2 sentences without crying. Dawson called paramedics for Faith. She refused the stretcher. She refused the wheelchair. But she let a young EMT clean the scrapes on her knees and check the swelling on her cheek. She sat on the back bumper of the ambulance, legs dangling, while the EMT pressed a cold pack to her face. The gel was cool and sharp against the heat of the bruise. "You should get an X-ray," the EMT said quietly. "The swelling is significant." "Later," Faith said. "Not tonight." Then a car pulled up. Not a police vehicle. A black sedan with city plates. The driver's door opened and Mayor Terrence Robinson stepped out. He didn't walk. He moved, fast, long strides, past the patrol cars, past the IA officers, past the neighbors still standing in their driveways with their phones at their sides. He moved like a man who had been holding his breath for 45 minutes and had finally been allowed to exhale. He reached Faith and stopped. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The most powerful man in the city, and his little sister, sitting on the back of an ambulance with torn leggings and a swollen cheek. Then he wrapped his arms around her and held on. The narrator paused here. Because this was the image that mattered. Not the badge, not the title, not the politics. A brother holding his sister on a sidewalk, both of them trembling, because the system he was supposed to lead had just chewed her up on a Tuesday evening. "I heard everything," Terrence whispered. His voice cracked like dry wood. "Every single word, Faith." She pressed her forehead against his shoulder. "Then you know what needs to happen." He nodded. He didn't let go for a long time. Across the street, Hartwell was being escorted to the IA sedan. He walked between two officers, his hands empty, his belt stripped. And as he walked, he talked. He couldn't stop talking. The excuses poured out of him like water from a cracked pipe. She matched a description. We had reports of suspicious activity in the area. There were no reports. There was no description. The IA officer didn't even bother responding. She was being uncooperative. She refused a lawful search. I had to maintain control of the situation. The body cam had already been secured. It would show a woman who passed every sobriety test, refused a search politely and legally, and was assaulted for it. I didn't know who she was. How was I supposed to know? And that last excuse, was the one that echoed the loudest, because it contained the truth he didn't mean to tell. He was saying that his behavior was only wrong because of who she turned out to be, that if she had been a teacher, a cashier, a nurse coming home from a night shift, someone without a title and a powerful brother, then what he did would have been fine. The IA officer opened the sedan door. Hartwell ducked inside. The door closed. The window was tinted dark. Sutton stood alone by the curb. Nobody had put him in a car yet. He just stood there, arms at his sides, staring at the spot on the pavement where Faith's knees had hit the ground. He stared at it for a long time. That night, Denise Holloway went home, sat on her couch, and uploaded the video. Her hands were still shaking when she typed the caption. "This happened on my street tonight." By midnight, it had 200,000 views. By sunrise, 2.4 million. By noon the next day, every major news network in the country was saying the name Faith Robinson. And Ashford, Virginia, would never be the same. The investigation moved like a freight train with no brakes. By Wednesday morning, the Ashford District Attorney's Office had opened a criminal case. By Wednesday afternoon, Internal Affairs had formally launched a dual-track investigation, one disciplinary, one criminal. By Wednesday evening, the body cam footage had been formally requested by 4 news organizations, 2 civil rights groups, and a congressional oversight committee. Mayor Terrence Robinson made a decision that changed everything. He ordered the body cam footage released to the public. No redactions, no delays, no carefully worded press release to soften the blow. Just the raw, uncut, 23-minute recording, from the moment Hartwell's flashlight hit Faith's windshield to the moment Dawson removed her handcuffs. The footage confirmed every detail, every word, every shove, every fabricated excuse. There was no ambiguity. There was no room for context or both sides. It was a man with a badge beating a woman without a reason, and the whole country watched it over breakfast. Then came Hartwell's personnel file. The IA investigation unsealed it within 48 hours. The narrator walked through it slowly, because the numbers mattered more than any single moment of the video. 11 complaints in 9 years. 8 involved Black or Latino civilians. 3 described excessive force during routine traffic stops. 2 included racial slurs captured on dashcam audio, slurs that had been flagged, reviewed, and filed away with no consequences. 1 complaint described Hartwell dragging a 19-year-old college student out of his car by the neck during a broken taillight stop. The student's mother had filed a formal grievance. It was marked resolved 6 weeks later. No suspension, no retraining. A letter of reprimand placed in a folder that nobody ever opened again. 11 complaints, 9 years, 0 real consequences. Until now. Sutton cooperated. He sat in a gray room at IA headquarters on Thursday morning and gave a full statement. He didn't lawyer up. He didn't deflect. He spoke for 2 hours and 40 minutes, and the recording would later be described by the DA's office as the most detailed first-hand account of systemic complicity we have received in a decade. "I knew it was wrong," Sutton said. His voice was flat, emptied out. "I knew it when he grabbed her. I knew it when he slapped her. I should have stepped in. I should have said something. I didn't. And I have to live with that." He was suspended pending review, but his cooperation was formally noted by the DA and would factor into every decision that followed. The criminal charges came down on Friday. The DA stood behind a podium in the Ashford County Courthouse, cameras flashing, microphones bristling like a steel forest. She read the charges in a voice that carried no emotion, because the facts carried enough. Assault in the 2nd degree, the slap and the shove, unlawful detention and false arrest. Faith had committed no crime and Hartwell had no probable cause. Violation of civil rights under color of law, a federal charge, referred to the Department of Justice. Filing a false police report, the fabricated swerving, the invented suspicious activity call, the resisting charge that never happened. 4 charges. Each one a nail in a coffin that Hartwell had built with his own hands. His attorney requested a plea deal the following week. The DA declined. The evidence was airtight. The public pressure was immense, and the footage had been viewed 41 million times. The trial lasted 4 days. Day 1, the body cam footage was played in full for the jury. 23 minutes. The courtroom was silent. One juror covered her mouth. Another looked away and then forced himself to look back. Day 2. Denise Holloway took the stand. She was composed, precise, and devastating. She described what she saw from her porch. She described the sound of the slap. Like somebody clapping once, hard, in an empty room. She described Hartwell's face when he threatened her. "He wasn't angry," she said. "He was enjoying it. That's what scared me the most." Day 3. Faith Robinson testified. She wore her dress uniform, stars on her collar, badge on her chest. She sat in the witness chair and described every moment of the stop with clinical precision. Every protocol Hartwell violated, every right he ignored, every lie he told. And then, near the end of her testimony, the prosecutor asked a simple question. Deputy Chief Robinson, what were you thinking when Officer Hartwell placed you in the back of his patrol car? Faith paused. The courtroom held its breath. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than it had been all day. I kept thinking, if I weren't who I am, would anyone ever know this happened? The sentence landed like a thunderclap in a silent room. The jury foreman closed his eyes. A reporter in the gallery stopped typing. That single line, 12 words, became the headline on every network by 6 o'clock. Day 4, closing arguments and verdict. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty, all counts. Hartwell was sentenced to 3 years in state prison. Lifetime ban from law enforcement anywhere in the United States. His pension was revoked. His name was entered into the National Decertification Index, a permanent record that would follow him for the rest of his life. He stood in the courtroom when the verdict was read. His face was blank. His attorney put a hand on his shoulder. Hartwell didn't react. He just stood there, a man who had spent 9 years believing he was untouchable, learning in real time that he was not. The fallout didn't stop at Hartwell. The DOJ launched a full federal review of the Ashford Police Department, the second in 5 years, this time with enforcement power and subpoena authority. Chief Gerald Tate was pressured to resign 3 weeks later when a leaked email surfaced. The email, sent to his deputy the morning after the incident, read, "Let's not blow this out of proportion. These things have a way of quieting down." That email became a scandal of its own. Faith Robinson was named the new chief of police. The city council confirmed her unanimously. She became the first black woman to hold the position in Ashford's 180-year history. Her first act as chief was to sign the Robinson Accountability Act into city law, mandatory body cam activation for every officer on every stop, an independent civilian review board with full subpoena power, automatic internal affairs investigation for any use of force incident, with results published quarterly. Sutton was dismissed from the force. He was not criminally charged. 2 months later, he published a written public apology, not through a lawyer, not through a PR firm. He wrote it himself and posted it online. It was 3 pages long. The last line read, "Silence is not neutrality. Silence is a choice, and I made the wrong one." 6 months later, Ashford looked different, not on the surface. The streets were the same. The welcome signs still said "Unity in Diversity." The coffee shop still opened at 6. The sprinklers still hissed on Maple Ridge Drive every morning at dawn. But underneath, where it mattered, the city had shifted on its foundation. Excessive force complaints dropped 40% in Faith Robinson's first 6 months as chief. Not because the complaints stopped happening, because the behavior stopped happening. Officers knew the rules had changed. They knew the body cams were always on. They knew the civilian review board was watching. And they knew that the woman sitting in the chief's office had once been slapped on a sidewalk by one of their own, and had turned that moment into a wall that nobody could climb over again. Faith still drove her Honda Accord on weekends. She still went to yoga on Tuesday evenings. She still wore the faded Howard University hoodie when she wasn't in uniform. Some things didn't need to change, but one thing was different. Every Tuesday, when she drove down Maple Ridge Drive on her way home, she slowed down at the spot where her knees had hit the pavement. She didn't stop. She didn't stare. She just let the car roll past, windows down, and remembered what it felt like to be powerless in a country that was supposed to protect her. Then she kept driving, because there was still work to do. Dale Hartwell sat in a state correctional facility 40 miles outside of Ashford. His appeal was denied in February. His pension was gone. His badge was gone. His name, once protected by a system designed to look the other way, was now a case study in what happens when the system is forced to look straight ahead. Bryce Sutton worked in private security for a logistics company on the edge of town. He didn't talk about Ashford PD. He didn't talk about that night. But every Saturday morning, he volunteered with a community policing nonprofit that trained officers on de-escalation and bystander intervention. He led a workshop called The Cost of Silence. He never missed a session. The narrator didn't call it redemption. Redemption was too big a word for a man who had watched a woman get slapped and said nothing. But Sutton was trying. And trying, the narrator noted quietly, counted for something. Not everything, but something. Mayor Terrence Robinson won re-election in a landslide. He carried every district, including the East Side, including Maple Ridge Drive. He credited the Robinson Accountability Act as his proudest achievement. At his victory speech, he said one sentence that made the front page: "My sister taught this city that accountability isn't a punishment, it's a promise." Denise Holloway went back to school. She enrolled in a social work program at the State University, specializing in community advocacy and trauma response. She was invited to speak at a national policing reform conference in Washington, D.C. She stood at a podium in front of 600 people and said, "I was just a nurse standing on my porch with a phone, but I didn't look away. And that's all I'm asking you to do, don't look away." She still lived on Maple Ridge Drive. She still worked double shifts at the hospital. But now, when she walked outside on warm evenings, she didn't just check the street. She watched it. Because she had learned that watching, really watching, was its own kind of power. The Ashford case didn't stay in Ashford. Within 3 months, it became a mandatory case study in police academies across 14 states. Instructors played the body cam footage in full. They paused it at the moment Hartwell slapped Faith. They asked the cadets one question: "What would you have done?" Most said they would have intervened. Then the instructors played Sutton's body cam, the angle that showed a young officer watching everything, saying nothing, doing nothing. They asked the question again. The room was always quieter the second time. Faith's testimony rippled outward for months. "If I weren't who I am, would anyone ever know this happened?" It was cited in 2 federal civil rights cases. It appeared in legal briefs, academic papers, and a Senate subcommittee hearing on police accountability. A law professor at Georgetown called it the most important question in modern policing. Faith never commented publicly. She didn't do interviews. She didn't write op-eds. She didn't start a podcast or sign a book deal. She went to work every morning, reviewed every use of force report, and made sure that what happened on Maple Ridge Drive would never happen to anyone else in her city. Not because she had power, because she remembered what it felt like to have none. So let me ask you something. If Faith hadn't been the deputy chief, if she had been a teacher, a cashier, a nurse finishing a night shift, do you think this story ends the same way? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear it. If this story hit you the way it hit me, leave a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you want more stories where the truth doesn't stay buried. Because justice isn't supposed to be a plot twist. It's supposed to be the whole story. And until it is, we keep telling these. See you in the next one.